ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply. Today I'm going to show you guys how to build a DIY 12/24 volt UPS style battery backup, aka a DIY Kraken. So today we are going to go over how to build yourself a DIY Kraken, aka 12/24 volt UPS battery backup system to keep your tank, your animals, and your stuff safe and going for the long term. Now the heart of this system is a 12 volt 100 amp hour PowerQueen premium group 24 battery. Not quite sure what the premium is, but they do make awesome batteries, and price per value, they're kind of my go-to because they're hard to beat. Now for this is going to be our main kind of capacity of our battery backup. 100 amp hours is going to last a long time, especially on a nano. And I'm not going to run the heater off it, but I am running the lights, the pumps, the ATO, and all the kind of core equipment. Now to actually power this, I'm using a NoCo Genius 10. Now this one is rated for lithium. There's no fan, there's nothing, it's all sealed up. So it's a really cool option for it. It can even do a 12 volt only supply mode, so very versatile. Now, so far this has been running, for today, and it's been awesome so far. Again, disclaimer, do at your own risk, safety first. I put fuses on all my power leads just for good measure. And because we're using a standard battery size, aka the Group 24, we can put this and it'll fit into a nice proper battery box later when we can button it up and make it all pretty. But for now, we're going for functionality, so let's get to building. Now the other reason I love lithium batteries is because they last a long time. This one's rated for over 10 years or 15,000 cycles. In order to get the battery power to the tank, we're going to be using two different DC to DC converters for this one. The first one is the one we used before, which is our 24 volt. So it takes 12 volts in and 24 volts out at 5 amps. And now the second one I'm going to be using, very similar, but this one only puts out 12 volts. And now you might be asking, why would you want to run a 12 volt in input 12 volt out off of a battery? Well, that's because how we're going to charge this. Essentially using a battery charger as the main power supply for the UPS. Now I have 5 volts out for the max on my 24 volt and 5 volts out on my 12 volt. So I picked up a 10 amp NoCo charger. Now this one is lithium safe. It can run constant 12 volt out. So there's a lot of really cool modes on this one. It's fanless, it's self-contained, so there's no noise. And essentially what we're going to be doing is using the charger to run our devices. And if the power goes out, it'll eventually default back to the battery and pull from the battery. So it should work like a UPS. I also picked up some ring terminals just so we can have it connected nicely instead of clamps. Of course, fuses, got to keep things safe. And a bunch of ring terminals. Start out, we're going to be using our ring terminals, and I did pick these up just so instead of using the big clamps that come with it, we have a nice easy way to just plug into it and have it perma running. And the other nice thing is if I have multiple battery backups, I can also just plug it in quick and easy to just top them off periodically if they're not always connected. Now it's actually really easy to wire this up. So one side we have an input, one and an output. Now the input is going to connect to the battery, so we need to add ring terminals so we have a nice easy way of connecting it. So I already added them to this guy. You can see I got my positive, my negative. But to do a ring terminal, it's really easy. We take our wire, strip it back, grab a ring terminal and slide it on. And then we take our crimp tool and crimp it down. Now a nice secure connection, and we got a ring terminal. So we're going to do that for both the positive and negative side. Now the 24 volt one I had already had a fuse in line. This one didn't, so I did solder one in. Ideally just buy one with a fuse to save the hassle. If you know how to solder, then it's also really easy to do. Now for the output, same thing. We got our positive and our negative for our output. And all I did is use these really simple little connectors to attach it to a barrel plug. Now with that, same thing, we got one for our positive, one for our negative, so black is always your negative. We just slide it into these little connectors, snap it down, and we have a nice secure connection. So really easy kind of DIY solder-free way of doing it. Now this is done, the only thing left to do is connect our 12 and 24 volt connectors to the battery as well as our charger. So I already plugged in our return pump and our light to those two barrel connectors. And the only thing left is to connect this to the battery. So we wire up our 3 black grounds to the negative terminal. And then of course, same thing for our positives. And our tank has power. So check that out. Cheers to you. I'm proud of you, you did it. You did a fantastic job following along and building your own DIY battery backup. Now, the heart of this is obviously the PowerQueen battery. This guy, you know, is rated 4,000, 15,000 cycles. This thing's gonna last ages, so absolutely love that. And I've bought a few of these. PowerQueen sent me a few of these. I use them for all kinds of projects, and bang for the buck, these guys are awesome quality for the value. Charger-wise, we went with the Noco Genius. Now, something to note. When I was initially charging the battery, when it was charging and running everything at once, earlier when you saw the power bars, it got pretty darn warm. And I looked at the website for them and it says it can be up to about 85 C, I think it was. So it is normal for it to get pretty hot while charging. Now, keep in mind, it was charging the battery and running our devices at once. So it might have been pushing a little too hard. So it might be a consideration after an extended power outage. You know, another thought is maybe you want to go for a 20 amp or a higher amperage one to make sure it has tons of headroom to charge and run stuff all at the same time. Now, as for running everything, you know, we have our 12 volt and our 24 volt outputs, and, you know, that's running to the respective devices. Very, very easy to wire up. You can see each one has an input and an output, and we got our plus and minus for in, plus and minus for out. So all the positives go to the positive for the inputs. And our outputs are going just to these little connectors that are going to the barrel connectors to run all of our gear. Now, the only one little issue that I had is this worked great on the pump, but the lights and the ATO, it was a little bit off. I think it was just that barrel. They need to have a bigger hole. So I did kind of shave it a bit. So if I was to rebuild this again, I would try and find some different barrel connectors that fit things a little bit better. But that, as you can see, it was actually very easy to wire this up. Now, this being a Group 24 battery means it's going to fit in all the standard battery boxes. And I might get one later just to kind of clean things up and mount it all and make everything look pretty instead of having the little rat's nest of wires on top. Now, of course, this is a DIY project, so the standard disclaimer of do at your own risk, don't burn your house down, always use fuses, you know, safety first. But yeah, overall, this is a pretty cool project. Now, I am happy. At first I was a little bit, you know, wondering if this is too hot is an issue, but since this has turned green a few hours ago, it's cooled right down and it's just, you know, slightly warm to touch rather than pretty toasty. So it seems fine to run everything on this tank. Now again, this is running Axis 40 and the light and the ATO. So relatively small load. Realistically, if this wasn't a noun on a big tank, I would just use this for my power heads. I wouldn't try and run my lighting off it. You absolutely could, but you'd have to scale things up a fair amount. But for this could probably run my tank for a couple days. Like 100 amp hours is pretty sweet. So really stoked for this. I think this is going to be a great kind of life-saving solution for the Nano. And again, if I unplug the battery charger, this is off. Tank didn't miss a beat. Light's still on, everything's still running. It's all running out the battery. So again, this is just like a giant UPS, which is pretty awesome. And I plug it back in, and now you can see now it's trying to recharge. So it's just gonna go through and just quickly test the battery. And if there's any little bits of dip in it, it's just gonna recharge it. But how cool is that? You can unplug the tank, nothing misses a beat. Everything runs. So super duper cool. So pretty stoked for this. And it really wasn't that hard to build. So yeah, if you guys build your own, if you've done something similar, you got any comments, suggestions, let me in the comments below because I'm always curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are. And it's just a really cool way to add a lot of resiliency to your tank. Especially if you live somewhere where there's, you know, frequent storms or power outages. I think it's a really awesome way to go. Alright guys, as always, if you enjoyed this, hit that like button. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.